What is happening out there, rotoscouts baseball fans? Welcome to the show, gang. Happy Wednesday. Middle of the afternoon. Hope your days are going well. Hope your weeks are going well. A couple of days since we spoke. Nothing too crazy's gone on. Hopefully everybody is doing well out there. Hopefully nobody out there is in the path of this storm that's barreling down on Florida right now. Just have the news on mute in the other channel. It looks like it's weakening, but definitely not good still. So hopefully everybody's safe out there and doing well. Little 4-game playoff slate to talk about here in the divisional round. Couple of elimination games on tap. Definitely looks like a fun one. Just bear with me real quick. I'm just getting the projections up on the website updated. If you're just joining us for the first time, rotoscouts.com is the website. You can get access to all of our projections, all of our tools and content for every single sport that we cover for less than $1 a day, regardless of which plan you're on. Trying to make it as reasonable as possible for people out there. Right now we're covering baseball and football. We launched, if you guys missed it out there, beta version of NHL projections went up yesterday. I used them. I just built one lineup, but I used them to decide which second line I was going to go with. Kind of knew what I was going to do with the first one. Used it to decide which defenseman I was going to go with. If Bobrovsky, the goalie from Florida, hadn't had a terrible game, I probably would have done okay with it. But we'll see how they do. Projections for NHL right now, work in progress. I had an old model. I threw together a new one. Got the file all built out, working on keeping up with all the line changes. That's going to be the time-consuming thing. But hopefully, assuming I can find a good window, usually around noon after morning skates and everything, should work out okay, but no promises on those. But we'll be covering basketball like crazy like last year, football through the rest of the season, and enough stalling. Let me actually click upload on these things. Baseball projections. There we go. So we've got the lineups for the first 2 games, not for the later games, kind of as expected. Phillies went with a little bit of a funky lineup. I think it's actually up on the screen right now so you guys can see it. Let me just hit the timestamp here so people know that this is up to date. 1 p.m. Oh, and I got to change the link. If you guys haven't noticed, we have downloadable CSVs now as well for all the different projections, which is a giant pain in the ass. The way, what I realized after I realized that I could do it this way is that you can't just upload the same file every time. It doesn't, for whatever reason, in the background replace the file. Like if I save it with the same file name and then re-upload that one after I've done an update and, like, say, a lineup changes or whatever, it doesn't change the file. So I literally have to save it as a brand new file every single time and then upload that new file every single time. So that's going to be fun for NBA. Might get to the point where I just pay for whatever that app is for NBA just to make my life easier. Presumably that one wouldn't do that. If that did that, it would be a disaster. All right, let's see. That's up to date. All right, I think we could start the show. Got a good handful of people here. Andy's hunkered down. Good to hear, Andy. Hopefully not anywhere near where some of the storm surge and everything's going to hit, but hopefully you're in out of harm's way anyway. But stay safe, buddy. Ridic Sports, good to see you. Weird how tricky 4-games seem after a couple of 2-gamers. Yeah, the 2-gamers, they get straightforward, but this one's going to be a little bit funky with the pitching, I think. Basically, all the pitchers I kind of have short projected. 3-4 innings for like the Keter Monteros of the world, and then the Ranger Suarez's, the Jose Quintanas of the world, like 5 innings. I don't think anybody's really getting a deep start here. So I think it's going to be kind of an interesting slate from that perspective. I have no idea what to make of Alex Cobb, making just his 4th start of the entire season. Cobb could go 6 today. Cobb could go 2 today. I really don't know what to make of it. I think the Cleveland bullpen is an interesting one to look at if you're looking for an offbeat kind of a play. My inclination is that Cobb doesn't pitch particularly deep, but I've been wrong about him before. And that's the one we'll start with. So taking a look at getting us into this slate here. Taking a look at the Vegas board. Guardians and the Tigers up top. 357 implied total on the Guardians side. 351 implied total on the Tigers side. Basically even up. 7 runs getting split down the middle. It's a 1-1 series in that one. It's Cater Montero on the mound for the Tigers. And it's Alex Cobb, again, making just his 4th start of the season and his first start since September 1st. He'll be going for the Guardians for however long. He pitched 6 innings on September 1st for whatever that's worth. Missed the end of the season with a blister, had other issues throughout the season that prevented him from pitching. Going to be an interesting one there. And then Cater Montero, just kind of okay. Some short outings down the stretch, a couple relief appearances. So I'm thinking like 4 innings of Montero and then hand off to the bullpen and try and get away with the win if you're Detroit. Definitely a game where I can see bats coming through, but I have a healthy enough respect for Cobb for whatever he's going to pitch that I don't love rushing to the Tigers, and then it's a very good Cleveland bullpen, despite the fact that Kerry Carpenter got to Emmanuel Clase the other day for the hardest hit ball that Clase's ever given up in his career, which was just incredible home run. Challenging spot for Tigers bats. The Guardians bats probably the stronger side of that one, despite the very similar totals. Just going up against a somewhat gettable pitcher in Montero. And then just with the high-end quality of those Guardians bats, a lot of balls in play at worst, so some sequencing, even if they're not hitting for power and creating giant scoring events. A lot more to work with in the Cleveland lineup. If the Tigers have... I have to look at the confirmed version of the Tigers lineup when we pull it back up. But if they're stacked up with lefties too, Cleveland could go... they've got a couple... what the hell's the guy's name? They've got a lefty that they might give 2 innings or so, depending on where and when Cobb comes out of the game. Sobrowski. He's on the roster. He hasn't pitched in the playoffs yet. But he's mostly pitched more than an inning in relief when he's come in. Relatively stretched out lefty. So I could see them using him for an inning plus if you're looking for an inning plus reliever. But it depends because most of their arms not all that taxed in the bullpen either. Phil's in an elimination game in Queens. Down 2-1. It's Jose Quintana on the mound for the Mets. Underrated. Really good pitcher. Guy's been good. Guy's been good for several seasons now. He's not great. He's no ace. But he's a lot better than people give him credit for. Every now and then he gets blown up. But by and large, he's pretty good. He's got decent strikeout stuff. Phillies went with a bit of a funky lineup. Lefty against them is the favored. It gives you a little bit of an edge against that lineup. On the Philly side, they're stacking up with Ranger Suarez in an elimination game. It's another spot where I feel like if they get through 4 innings with Ranger, the way he's been struggling, they're probably going to say, all right, thank you very much. Let me hand off to Matt Strom for 2 innings, and let's piece this together from here. I don't know that we're getting much more than that out of Ranger, and he's been pretty rough. Outside of a September 5th start against Miami in which he shut them out over 5 innings, struck out 4. He's given up a handful of earned runs in basically every start since mid-June. It's been pretty problematic for them. Hasn't gotten completely destroyed, but we're talking about 4 or 5 runs in a lot of these games. And some short outings in there too. Topping out 4 and change, 5 innings. There's a couple 6s, a couple of attempts to complete the 6th inning, but not many actual 6-inning completions in there. So in an elimination game, again, just really don't see the deep start for Ranger there. I could definitely see a deeper start for Jose Quintana. Dead even basically in Vegas in this one too. 3.78 implied total for Philly, 3.80 implied total, 7.5 runs splitting them dead evenly. The Yanks and KC tied going into Kansas City. Seth Lugo on the bump for Kansas City, and Clark Schmidt answering back for the Yanks. I can see 5 innings for both of these guys. I think that's pretty reasonable. Clark Schmidt outpacing Lugo and one of the top projected pitchers on the short slate. Talented kid. We'll see what kind of depth they give him, though. The Yanks do tend to get to that bullpen early as well, so it could be a shorter than 5-inning start for him. If anybody's on base in the 4th, you could definitely see them go to the bullpen early. Yanks need this one. This is a game that the Yankees, they don't want to go down 2-1 in this series. And that, duh. But, just with the way things stack up for the Yankees and the way that all the reporting is in New York and everything, and everybody getting negative about even being 1-1, it's just, they need this one. Lugo on his side, pretty good. Pitched over his head for most of the season, but pulled it off. You can't argue with the depth. Gave us a lot of 7-inning starts down the stretch. Had some good strikeout games down the stretch. Could definitely have a good day against the Yanks. One of probably the safer options for at least 5 into the 6th inning. I could see Lugo completing the 6th here if things are going right. And then the Dodgers and the Pods, another elimination game. Dodgers down 2-1. Padres with Dylan Cease on the mound, looking to put away their division rival. Cease has didn't have the greatest game against this team down the stretch on the 25th. Didn't have the greatest game won against this team, but projects out as the top overall pitcher. Again, I kept him at a relatively short start. It's 5 and change, I think, in the model. But it's still in Cease. 7.5 runs for the game, 3.46 on the Dodgers side. And then the Padres, 4.12 implied total, highest on the board. They're going up against Landon Knack to open the game, and then it's declared a bullpen game. We'll see how much leash they give Landon Knack. I think I gave him 2 or 3 innings. I think it was 3 that I settled on in the end. Oh, wait, I don't want to close this tab. Hold on 1 second. Let me just... Yeah, no change there. It is still Knack. I'm just keeping an eye on that, making sure that they don't change that one out with Knack being the guy. Just make sure that since they've said, hey, since Robert said this is going to be a bullpen game, just make sure that he's the guy, going into lock or after. It's going to be such a late start that it could change after lock for the 3 o'clock whatever slate. Yo, put me in the game, Coach Chris. What's going on, man? Jake Swales is here. Jake's in Tampa playing DFS. Stay safe, buddy. I hope you're off the ground floor. Let's put it that way. But yeah, best of luck, bud. It's a choice to ride things out, but hopefully you're safe and well secured and well above sea level, or as best as possible in that town. But yeah, hoping for the best. By the way, Tampa. Maybe it's just a thing going around the internet that's not actually true, but what is up with the idea that your main hospital is apparently on an island and below at sea level, below whose idea is that? What kind of planning is that? It's a little bizarre. But yes, hopefully, again, everything is okay down there. And hopefully you stay safe, pal. Don't want to see you winning a DFS contest with our projections while you're being washed out to sea, Going to be able to be around to enjoy those winnings. Alex Cobb on the hill for the Guardians. Forgot to pull up the pitching. Let's see. There we are. And Alex Cobb lands right here on the pitching board. Again, he is a talented guy. He could go out there and strike out his fair handful of Tigers. Even in 3 innings. Which is I forget if I gave him 3 or 4 in the end. But his projection stacks up to a decent level in a short start. It's just 88-74, no chance at any kind of win bonuses or anything. When you do have at least this handful of pitchers is probably going to chase your win bonuses, where I think this handful is probably less than likely to. So it's pretty stark from that consideration. Cease, again, despite facing the Dodgers, there's just too much talent there to not have him as the top projected arm, even in a shortened start. Clark Schmidt, a lot of upside for him, but KC is quite good, and they're fairly low strikeout, so it's a challenging spot. 91 is a hefty price to pay for Clark Schmidt on FanDuel. 79 is a lot more realistic on the DraftKings slate. Quintana, again, against Philly, 8,600, 7,200. I have no problems going to that one, and he sits at a offset projection from the bottom part of that board. There's a little bit of daylight between him and even Seth Lugo. Lugo could overperform the projection. Out of everybody who's at a semi mid-level median projection, I gave him 5. Like I said, though, he's one of the guys that I would consider out of this board to be a little bit more of an upside toward pitching at least into the 6th inning. So Lugo could exceed these projections. He's got more ceiling. He's got more ceiling beyond his projections than, say, Schmidt and Quintana do. Not necessarily Cease. He and Lugo probably top out at the same mid-30s ceiling kind of a number. But Lugo's got more distance from his median projection to gain than Cease does. But I do think that we see the Yanks probably put some runs on him. Not necessarily blow him up, but a couple of runs where it's not necessarily that they're going to be overly inclined to give him the 6th inning. Top 2 pitchers, do you all believe in Cease? Yeah, again, I do. Cease, I just think you got to ride with talent at a certain point. I hate tackling the Dodgers, especially in an elimination game, but he is easily the most talented pitcher on this slate. It's not even a discussion. He is the only true ace on the slate. Everybody else comes with at least question marks. Everybody's going to come with depth question marks, but Cease also could go out there, and he's another guy who is quite likely to give you 6. Or I should say quite likely to give you 5 with the upside for 6. So at a point, you're just buying that. Good boy, Joker. Don't knock the camera over, buddy. Come on. Come over here. There we go. His tail's swinging and hitting the camera wire back behind the desk. Good boy. Go lie down. So, Landon Knack, just again, I think we're getting a couple of innings. Maybe not even enough to even reach those median projections. That's a 3-inning projection. 84,700 against San Diego. It's a play that should fit in at 6s on DraftKings. So easily in the 7s maybe on FanDuel. He's 1,000 too expensive probably for the innings that he's going to pitch. Ranger Suarez at 95 on FanDuel, 82 on DraftKings. Just challenging price-wise, challenging for he's probably not going to give you. In a good game, I think he gives you 5. On the average day, you roll this 100 times, I think more often than not, Ranger comes out before completing the 5th inning. That's how I've got him projected. Could be wrong. He is a guy who has talent in that arm. He was very, very good over the first 2.5 months of the season. It was like mid-June when he fell apart. So the first part of the season, he was excellent, if you guys remember. And then Montero at the bottom of the lineup, I just don't think we're getting many pitches there either. And he's facing a really good Cleveland lineup. But me and Coach is saying in tournaments is value to play like Cleveland Stacks in Detroit and one-offs like San Diego Dodgers and the Mets. Just trying to get different, man. Baseball's different from NFL and NBA for me. Yeah, It depends, if you're playing a bunch of lineups, then yeah, you want to get a good spread across all those teams. If you're building one lineup, yeah, I usually tend to not go to the bottom and play the most desperate possible angle into the slate that's never going to work. But maybe not go to the absolute chalk of the day either. So yeah, landing on a team like the Guardians makes some sense. Landing on a team like the Tigers makes sense. The Royals probably make some sense from that perspective today. Where I'm sure the Yanks are going to be super popular. I threw a placeholder together and I ended up building a Yankees-Royals game stack just to put it together to see what I could get to. Right now I've got it in, but it's using a relief pitcher, which I don't really love doing on FanDuel. So I'm probably not going to stick with that lineup, but that was the first thing that I threw together. And I imagine that, again, with the Royals probably being a little bit lower owned than some of the other pieces, that's somewhat viable. And that is the game with the highest overall run total. Arcadels is here. What's up, buddy? If you could pick any two pitchers regardless of price, who would it be? Probably just Cease and Schmidt off the top. I do think I would rather have Clark Schmidt against KC than Quintana against Philly or Lugo against the Yanks. It's close. Cease is the definite in that answer, in that, the way that question's put. Not that he's safe by any means whatsoever, but again, the only true ace on the slate. So it's Cease, and I do think we'd just go top two right there. Good as KC is, low strikeout as they are, that is a softer matchup than these two teams. And he is a reasonable comp for those pitchers. Not a lot of distance between Seth Lugo and Clark Schmidt. So I think that's the way I would go. I don't think there's anything wrong with Cease and Lugo. Like, just to pop some numbers on real quick, since they're in the same game, we can put these guys together. Lugo gives you, a better shot at depth. 33 starts. He's one of the few guys in the league who threw more than 200 innings. Again, a number of 7-inning starts down the stretch where his strikeout rate was spiking up. 21.7 for the year over that huge sample of 3.0 ERA, a 3.83 xFIP. On the other side, Schmidt struck out more, but again, a lower strikeout opponent. 26.3% strikeout on the season. Stuff Plus likes his arsenal better. Both guys are good at limiting home runs. Both guys are good at limiting power. I would just probably rather not tangle with the Yankees lineup than, in terms of the opposing lineups. Yeah, this is a tremendous three-man group right there. Yeah, these Royals are operating this lineup, this projected version, at a 19% strikeout rate. That's not quite as low as it can be with some versions of this lineup, but this is what they've been going with lately. This back end, some of these guys can come through. Some of these guys can be dangerous on the right day, but this is a lot less threatening, even with, an Ozzy Cabrera, Alex Verdugo, Anthony Volpe back end for the Yankees. There's just more upside across those six. So I think Lugo's under a little bit more threat. At the same time, I said that I don't really care about that with the Dodgers against Dylan Cease in a game where the Dodgers could get eliminated. So, you take these things with a grain of salt. At a point, you can ride with the projections a little bit and just say, hey, there's some daylight between those guys and Lugo. But again, if Lugo throws another inning on the fire there, he gets right up to those medians, which is why I do think he's got an equal, or it's ceiling-wise, like absolute ceiling-wise, it's probably Cease, Lugo, Quintana, Schmidt. So it depends on what you're looking for. There's different ways to answer that question. Not to be evasive about it. Power thinks Cease is going to cease to pitch in about the fourth. He gave up some runs to this team the other day. He faced them on the 25th. He only went 5 innings, gave up 3 earned runs, struck out 4, walked 3. It's a tremendously difficult lineup to pitch against. Let's get into it, though. All right, so again, Alex Cobb on the mound for the Guardians, like I was starting out a couple minutes ago. He did go 6 on September 1st. That was against the Pirates. Struck out 6, gave up 1 unearned run on 2 hits. Very good Alex Cobb kind of a game. 5 2/3 on August 14th and 4 2/3 on August 9th. That is his entire season. He gave up 4 earned runs in the 4 2/3 inning game. It was pretty good over the 5 2/3. It's not out of the question that Alex Cobb could come out here and pitch 5 or 6 innings. He pitched a couple simulated games through September. Said he was feeling good. That is about as much information as we have on the subject. You're really rolling the dice if you go to that play. Over the past couple seasons, this year, it's such a small sample as to really not make a difference. But last year, more meat on the bone, 151 1/3 over 28 starts, a 3.87 ERA with a 3.51 xFIP. A pretty good walk rate, 5.7% walk rate against a 20.3% strikeout rate. The strikeout's obviously not exactly high, but that's a still decent strikeout to walk ratio. Was better the year before, 23.9 against 6.8. Still a very strong strikeout to walk ratio with a higher overall strikeout rate. Was very good in terms of a 3.73 ERA with a 2.89 xFIP. Very solid strike thrower that year. The strike throwing diminished last year, which takes away some of the strikeout rate upside. Again, this is super small sample, but wasn't exactly inducing swinging strikes or generating called strikes or finding called strikes in the small sample earlier this year. So a limited aged up pitcher in probably a short outing. 74.88 doesn't really feel cheap enough, especially on FanDuel. That's priced like Cobb's going to give you a shot at 6 innings here, which I don't really think we have. Tigers on the other side of this one look okay. Cobb non-tragic as far as home runs go the last couple of seasons. 1.43% home run rate on a 3.7% barrel. Excellent at inducing ground balls, limiting contact to 1.8 degree average launch 2 years ago, 1.3 last year, just 0.9 in the small sample so far this year. So that's reflected here in the home run model against him. But Kerry Carpenter's still going to hit the ball very hard. Riley Green, still a very effective lefty. Colt Keith, an interesting lefty. Trey Sweeney, an interesting lefty. Parker Meadows up at the top spot. So the reason I'm highlighting the lefties is because, like I said, there are some interesting arms in the Cleveland bullpen if it is a short day for Alex Cobb. The the Guardians, over the last couple of days, on Monday, they used all of Clase, Cade Smith, Tim Herron, Hunter Gaddis, and Eli Morgan. The last three, Herron threw 12 pitches, Gaddis threw 11, and Morgan threw 2, and that was 2 days ago. So there's not a ton of strain on the bullpen right now. But they've got some additional arms in there. Andrew Walters is out there. Gavin Williams is out there. Joey Cantillo is out there. I don't expect to see Gav Williams, even though he's a guy who could give you a couple of innings. He's never done it before. So I really don't think we see that. I think they would probably want to not tax those arms too, because those are guys who were starting, and more likely, they want them for that role. The guy who's kind of interesting, I think, who hasn't thrown innings in the postseason is Eric Sabrowski. Come on. Last pitched on the 27th. He threw 12 2/3 innings over the course of basically September. 26-year-old, about to be 27-year-old lefty. What I'm kind of interested in is, one, the lefty thing, because of all those lefties in this Detroit lineup and a lot of their key hitters being left-handed. So, let's say we're going to start an inning at, down here at Trey Sweeney. That means you duck Cobb out of there, you pop him in. 1, 2, 3. You get through Jake Rogers, take him or leave him, and then you're coming around again for the inning plus with Riley Green and Colt Keith there. Regardless of where you do that in the lineup, you'll have those opportunities against lefties. Obviously, they'll be able to pinch hit and everything against, and you got to keep an eye on that if you're stacking up Tigers. But I think he's a kind of interesting option for that possibility. So it's just one to watch. I have no guarantees whatsoever that he gets into the game at all. But he's a completely untaxed arm in that bullpen right now. And he is left-handed. So, and if Cobb gives you 5, then you're probably not going to see that. They'll just go to the standard guys in the bullpen for 6, 7, 8 and close it out. But if Cobb gives you 2 and they need somebody for the 3rd and the 4th, somewhere in that territory, then I think we're, potentially in business. He cost 4,000 on DK, 55 on FanDuel, had a 40% strikeout rate over 12 and 2/3. Stuff Plus really likes him, a 13.1% swinging strike rate. And again, I'm just looking at the lefty of it. On the other side, Cater Montero. On the 29th, he went 3 innings in bulk relief, gave up 2 runs on 4 hits, 1 of them earned, struck out 2. Had a 2 strikeout start that lasted 2 and 2/3 on the 25th against the Rays before that, 1 earned run on 4 hits. A 5-run start against Baltimore, 4 and 2/3. Through the season, it amounted to a 4.76 ERA, a 4.33 xFIP, 18.7% strikeouts. This is where things start to get shaky with the Tigers and this beautiful run that they've been on, is that this pitching staff on the back end gets a little bit thin. Throwing Cater Montero up against this Guardians team in a playoff game, not exactly ideal here. You can see he gave up a ton of home runs, 4.61% home run rate over his 98 1/3 innings. It didn't come on the worst contact in the world. We're well under the threshold that we're looking for there. In the exit velo, we're not bad. Even the barrels are not terrible. So a little bit of medium sample happenstance maybe in those numbers. But that's a aggressively high home run rate, especially for a guy who doesn't really strike anybody out and pitches to a decent amount of contact against a aggressively contact-focused team. So really don't love the spot for Montero. 65, 8,000 across sites. I think you're dealing with a 4-inning upside probably, and then just try and get through. So really, really limited. I gave him 3 because I think that's what we're probably getting. But 4 is probably your absolute ceiling. So really shaky on his end. Guardians bats definitely in play. Tigers bats definitely in play, especially with the shaky nature of both pitchers in this one. They are appealing. Again, regardless of kind of low-end Vegas totals, everybody's projected low for one thing. But just given the pitching in this one, I think this is a targetable game. Steven Kwan, Kyle Manzardo off the top. Josh Naylor, 3 out of the 4 top hitters are lefties. And then we got Jose Ramirez hitting from either side of the plate. Pretty high-end group of hitters. Throw it a shaky righty who gives up a ton of power. You've got 2 guys in the middle of the lineup with Jose Ramirez and Josh Naylor, both well above the magic number in terms of home run upside. And then some solid mid-level numbers in the 7.97 that Steven Kwan is sporting. Kwan hit 14 home runs this year. It was a weird Steven Kwan year. Still got on base at a 368 clip. He hit 292 for the season. He stole 12 bags. The 14 home runs are totally uncharacteristic. And they still came on just 2.6% barrels, 23.7% hard hits. He still just had a 133 ISO. It's not like he became a power hitter. Just ended up at a weird total. A couple balls got out that, in a lot of other years probably wouldn't have. Kyle Manzardo, over 156 plate appearances, hit 5 home runs in the regular season, a 186 ISO, decent power bat, young prospect, 9.5% barrels and 40% hard hits. He comes very cheap at 2,400 on both sites. Definitely an interesting bat if you're stacking up Guardians. I like the upside for him. I like the power. I think it's very real. And against a home run, a pitcher who gives up a lot of home runs, has a bit of an issue with it. Manzardo's in play easily. Ramirez for 61.42. You just pay it. If you're stacking this team up, he's not expensive because everybody around him is cheap. On both sites, that's true, but it's more true on DraftKings. Just grab the top 5 guys, gets you 42.60 apiece, including Jose Ramirez, Josh Naylor, Lane Thomas, Steven Kwan. That's a really talented group of players to get for 4,200 apiece. 42.60, excuse me. We'll round up 4,300 apiece to throw at Cater Montero. That's stupid cheap. On FanDuel, if you just wanted a top 4 of that, it's 3,200 apiece, which is just average-ish. Really, really cheap on DraftKings. Ramirez, 39 home runs, 41 stolen bases. Would have loved to have seen him get a crack at home run number 40, but they canceled their last game. That sucked. The 40-40 season was in play. Josh Naylor, 4,000, 3,200, hit 31 home runs to be a nice bat in tandem with Ramirez there. Lane Thomas, they picked up mid-season or trade deadline. 15 home runs, 32 stolen bases on the year, a 99 WRC plus. Wasn't good, wasn't bad, just kind of an average-ish season. 237, 309, 400 is disappointing, but did hit 15 home runs and steal 32 bags while hitting the ball fairly hard, 40.6% hard hit rate. So there are good things in there for Lane Thomas, just some bad luck throughout the season, slow start to the year in Washington. Definitely a lot of upside on an any given slate sense, and plays very well in Cleveland stacks. Andres Jimenez, 36-28, 9 home runs, 30 stolen bases, a sub 300 on base, not good for that kind of player, an 83 WRC plus. Didn't hit for any kind of power this year, puts a ton of bat on ball and doesn't walk. It's just low quality bat on ball when he does it. Needs to find more luck along the way to get on base a little bit more via BABIP would help, but does have a DFS kind of a skill set in terms of a little bit of, we've seen more power out of him in years past, and a definite stolen base upside. So just needs to decide what he's going to be out there. Will Brennan, 26-22 across sites, 8 home runs, 4 steals on the season, and 98 WRC plus over basically a half a season worth of plate appearances. It's an okay hit for average, get on base, low strikeout, low walk, so a lot of balls in play, kind of a hitter. Bo Naylor, aggressive strikeout option, high, medium grade power. 13 home runs, a 150 ISO on the season, a lot of Ks. Brian Rocchio, more here for defense, hit 206, 298, 316 this year. 8 home runs, 10 steals, and a 79 WRC plus. These frisky Tigers just won't go away. All these young lefties, the guys that I was talking about, maybe they end up going to that lefty out of the pen if Cobb short starts. All of those guys super in play for the innings that Cobb's in here. And, presumably most of them are in there for the long haul. Parker Meadows, Kerry Carpenter's a great duo off the top. Carpenter, the best hitter on this team, or second best, depending on what you think of Riley Green. Over 296 plate appearances. He had 18 home runs. He slashed 284, 345, 587. Had a monster 303 ISO. 16.9% barrels, 45.1% hard hits. Cost just 44 on DraftKings, just 31 on FanDuel. Tigers are cheap on both sides. Carpenter just needs to be on the field, and he is a star caliber power hitter from the left side. He's very, very good. Meadows, a mixed kind of an option. Multi-category contributor, 9 homers, 9 steals in 298 plate appearances. Didn't hit the ball particularly hard, struck out a little bit too much for the kind of player that he is, but did come up with a 189 ISO, 111 WRC plus in a half a season. Matt Vierling had a pretty decent year, 4,200, 16 home runs, 257, 312, 423. Created runs 8% better than average. Not a bad option if you're stacking Tigers. Not overly appealing, not like on his own. He's just another outfielder. On his own, he's a low-end third baseman. Better in stacks than he is on his own, but capable, a decent enough player. All of these guys, again, going to be impacted a little bit just by Cobb and his ability to induce ground balls. So that's impacting the home run model a lot. Even Kerry Carpenter at just 6.19 in the home run model. Riley Green hit 24 on the season, had a 217 ISO, created runs 35% better than average over 584 plate appearances. Struck out a lot at 26.7, but walked at 11%. The best option on this team as far as that combination of 348 on base was first on the team. Only Kerry Carpenter was competitive with him as far as that number goes. 13.4% barrels, 46.2% hard hits on the season for Green. He's a tremendous option. Really good way to get a Tiger stack started. 46, 3,000 for the cleanup hitter. Correlates really well with the guys in front of him in the lineup. And then has a little bit of support behind him as well. Wenceel Perez, I think, is more a mix and match option. A switch hitter, 33-26, 9 homers, 9 steals over 425 plate appearances. Was substandard as far as his WRC plus, 5 points below average. Only got on base at a 300 clip, but it is an interesting skill set for DFS, and he has contributed, in spots. Colt Keith, a lot of upside as far as his prospect pedigree goes. 13 home runs on the season, a 260, 309, 380 hitter. 3 points below average for run creation, but a playable piece, very cheap at second base from the left side. Torkelson, 34-27. if we're taking the home run upside away, that's, a little bit limiting for this kind of a hitter. 27.6% strikeout rate against 8.7% walks. Hit 10 home runs in 381 plate appearances in the show. Was better in the minors throughout this season when they sent him down. Had a 30-plus home run year just last year. So there is upside there. There is talent there. For the 34-27, he's very, very cheap. If you get an opportunity later in the game against a weaker pitcher or a pitcher who's a little bit more inclined to give up home runs, he picks his upside back up. Definitely playable if you're stacking Tigers at worst. Troy Sweeney at the 3,000, 2,800 had 4 home runs in his 119 plate appearances down the stretch, a 155 ISO. A high-end kid that was part of multiple trades and worked his way to Detroit. And has been fairly decent. Lefty bat, hits the ball pretty squarely, 44.3% hard hits in the regular season. And then Jake Rogers squared the ball up again pretty effectively, 9.9% barrels, 41.3% hard hits. It resulted in 10 home runs, but it also only resulted in a 155 ISO, and everything else was pretty weak. 197 average, 255 on base, just a 352 slug, and a 71 WRC+. Pretty limited. Guardians bats, probably Tigers bats, and then Alex Cobb over Kedro Montero just on experience. I don't even know why. On projection, obviously, he's projected out a little bit better, but there's not a lot to work with on the mound with either one of these guys, I don't think, today. Phils and the Mets. So Jose Quintana, 170 and a third on the season, went 10-10 over his 31 starts, 135 strikeouts. It amounted to a 18.8% strikeout rate, but he had a couple big strikeout days through the season, multiple 8 strikeout games, spiked a 9 strikeout game in just 4 1/3 against Milwaukee down the stretch on the 28th. 4 1/3, 2 earned runs, faced 20 hitters, struck out 9, walked 2. Handed off to the bullpen in a must-win game. 7 innings in each of his starts prior to that one against Washington. Struck out 4, no runs on 2 hits. Struck out 4, no runs on 3 hits against Philly. Struck out 6, over 6 2/3. No runs on 5 hits against Cincinnati in the start before those two. It was a good September in what was a pretty strong year. Finished the year with a 3.75 ERA, had a 4.44 xFIP underneath it. That's probably the real pitcher. But he's beaten his xFIP. He's been, if memory serves, he's beaten his xFIP anyway. I know he's been sub 4 ERA each of the last couple seasons. I think he's beaten his xFIP each year. Yeah, this year 3.75 ERA with a 4.44 xFIP. Last year 3.57 ERA with a 4.47 xFIP. Year before that was in 75 2/3. Year before in 165 2/3, a 2.93 ERA with a 3.72 xFIP. That was probably his best season. Four wins above replacement that year. 20.2% strikeouts. It's probably not his best season. That would be unfair to his pretty solid beginning of his career. But for 7,200, 8,600 against a moderately gettable Phillies lineup with a 23% strikeout rate, some of their lefties buried down toward the bottom of the lineup with Bryson Stott and Brandon Marsh in the lineup today, lefty-lefty. Weston Wilson in the lineup today with a 29.6% overall strikeout rate. He is right-handed. He is 2,300 on FanDuel at 4 different positions, so that's a little bit of an asset just for lineup building on a short slate where... I was going to say where people are expensive because it's very good teams in the playoffs, but that's not really even true. All these teams are cheap. But Weston Wilson is available and plays multiple positions on both sides for a cheap price. Cheaper on FanDuel overall at more positions. On the Phil side of things, Ranger Suarez at 8,200, 9,500. I just don't really have faith right now. It's been really bad. I haven't really gotten into what exactly might have caused the issues. But he hasn't completed 6 innings since July 12th. Even the good start on against Kansas City on August 24th, he gave up just 1 earned run over 5. Good start against Miami that I mentioned earlier on September 5th. He gave up no runs over 5. Everything is short. He pitched into the 6th twice since mid-July. He's given up more than 4 earned runs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 out of his last, let's say, dozen starts, he gave up 4 or more earned runs. Again, non-tragic numbers. For the season, it still looks pretty decent. 3.46 ERA with a 3.26 xFIP overall, over 150 and 2/3 innings in 27 starts, 23.2% strikeout rate. Limited strike thrower at 9.4%, 26.9% CSW, but is good at checking power. Just 6.3 degree average launch this year, 2.24% home runs, induce weak and medium contact pretty effectively. And the same has been true over time. 2.41% last year home runs, 2.27% the year before on a 5.1 degree, 8.1 degree average launch. He's not the best at doing what he does as far as limiting power, inducing ground balls, but he is very good at it. He's among those guys. And again, had a terrific start to his season. In a must-win game, they turn to him, but ask any Philly fan that you know what they think of that, and that'll tell you everything you need to know about how good Rangers been or how bad Rangers been over the last month or so. Let's see, so over 52 and a third his last 11 starts. Actually, I'll put that 12th one in there since I think it was exactly 12 when I said over a dozen before. Over that last dozen starts, he has a 6.17 ERA, but he does have a 3.93 xFIP, which is, again, the more telling of those numbers. 4.42 actual FIP. Strikeouts are down 7.71 K per 9. Walking 3.39 per 9. I just have difficulty trusting that we're getting much more than, again, on a good day, 5 innings. Mamba's expecting more runs from Ranger today. Hey, look, the Phils are saying all the usual things about trusting him and having faith and blah blah blah, but it's been problematic. I don't typically like to do that, but yeah, I do kind of lean toward what Mamba's saying about it just seems like something's up. Phillies Division Series roster. Phillies bullpen. So Alvarado and Estevez both threw more than 20 pitches last night. So they're probably at best a couple of pitches. They're not going to be coming in to immediately relieve Ranger. The one that I think is kind of interesting in that role is Matt Strahm. He hasn't pitched since Sunday. He went Saturday and Sunday, 17 and 18 pitches respectively. Capable for sure of multiple innings. He's a lefty. I don't know necessarily that it's a spot where it's like, go out and put him in your lineup, but it does seem pretty likely that we're going to see him today. That said, he really hasn't worked more than an inning in quite a while. Hasn't gone more than an inning since June 21st. Wow. Had been more of a multi-inning guy prior to that this year and was a more multi-inning focused reliever last year. Yeah, he was used for 2 a lot more frequently through last year. He was a starter at the beginning of last year, and then was used for 2 a lot through last year, but they did cut that down pretty significantly since mid-June. So maybe unwind that even a little bit further. Kerkering we'd probably see at some point. He only threw 10 pitches last night. Who else? Jose Ruiz, Jeff Hoffman, Tanner Banks. Hoffman's out there. Ruiz is out there. Banks is out there. So none of those guys has pitched since at least Sunday. Banks hasn't pitched since Saturday. What's Banks' deal? Banks, another lefty. He was used in multiple innings pretty regularly. And when I say regularly, it's a couple times a month. But for example, that starts in August. In September, he got into 10 games and went an inning and a third twice. Went 2 innings a couple times in August. So another guy, maybe, if you were inclined to take shots at bullpen arms, maybe he gets just on rest. But they're probably going to be trying to keep it high-end, high leverage in an elimination game, so I don't think we necessarily land on that kind of a guy. 32-year-old journeyman reliever. Yep, KC's lineup is out. As far as the lineups go, it is a game where, more so maybe than your typical playoff game, we could expect some offense given the pitching in this one. But again, that's a little disrespectful to how good Quintana's been. But the Mets doing their thing out there could definitely get to Ranger Suarez. It's going to be a matter of whether or not they can elevate a little bit against Suarez. Get the ball in the air and create some big scoring events. 2 fairly evenly matched lineups, though. From the top of the Phils, Kyle Schwarber, one of the top 3 true outcomes guys in the league. 38 home runs, a 366 on base, 28.5% strikeouts, but comes with a 15.3% walk, so we don't really care about the Ks. Last year, 29.9 and 17.5 with similar power output. It's just what he does. 15.6% barrels, 54.9% hard hits. Not going to be affected lefty-lefty here at all, really. What'd Schwarbs do? Schwarbs this year, 12 of his 38 home runs against fellow lefties. And a better slash line, 300, 407, 490 with a 190 ISO, 153 WRC+. So the power in terms of his ISO was lessened. He had a 264 ISO against righties, but he struck out more against righties. He hit for a much lower average. He got on base quite a bit more against same-handed pitching in a smaller sample, and he created runs 20 some odd points better against same-handed pitching in a smaller sample. No threat whatsoever from the lefty-lefty here. Trey Turner, 53, 37, 21 home runs, 19 steals, a very high-end shortstop on a slate with several very high-end shortstops, but Turner fits right in with them, and, if people may be a little bit more inclined to lean Lindor for the bigger numbers, maybe a little bit more inclined to lean Bobby Witt for the bigger numbers. What do we have? Mookie at the end of the night, still shortstop eligible. At least on FanDuel, Mookie's still shortstop eligible. Really nothing from the Padres side. Volpe, meh. So as far as that mix goes, there's a lot of good reason to consider Trey Turner if he's going to be the third banana as far as ownership goes. A lot of production, 124 WRC plus, fantastic correlation with these guys. Bryce Harper, 51, 38, 30 home runs on the season, a 240 ISO, a 145 WRC plus. Nicky Castellanos, 4,400, 3,200. No offense to our friends in Florida who are in harm's way and hopefully staying safe, as we've said several times during the show. But Nicky Castellanos on a day where a major hurricane is going to make landfall, probably pretty interesting for some home run upside. 4.53 in your home run model today. Alec Bohm, 39, 3,000, 15 homers, a 280, 332, 448 hitter, a 115 WRC plus with a 168 ISO. Excellent low strikeout, medium walk rate, 14.2% Ks, 6.6% walks, 45.1% hard hit rate. Very, very good at putting the ball in play, hitting it very hard. Stings the ball, as they say. A lot of well-struck line drives out of this hitter. Doesn't elevate, doesn't have the best barrel rate, 6.5% barrel rate. I don't have the launch angle, his average launch, because I don't really care about it as much with hitters. It's wrapped up in barrel rate anyway. But that's why we land at 15 home runs, despite being somebody who does hit the ball really hard. Just a different type of hitter, but very effective. Him and, as I made the comparison I made a bunch of times, him and Vinny Pasquantino are lefty-righty facsimiles of one another in those respects. JT Realmuto, 42-28, the home run pick from the Phillies today, 4.19 in the home run model, 14 on the season, a 163 ISO. Probably should have gone with Castellanos because of the hurricane, but I went with Realmuto. Just one of those ones where as I was looking at them, it just kind of buzzed into my head, and I said, ooh, JT Realmuto day. 10.4% barrels, 45.9% hard hits on this season. Another solid Realmuto season. It wasn't spectacular. The stolen bases are down at just 2 overall this year, but he's cheap for his upside, for his talent level in a playoff game. It's a very solid option at those prices. Totally playable on FanDuel too, by the way. Bryson Stott, 3,800, 2,800. What did Stott do? I think against same-handed pitching this season, Stott, 223, 318, 277, just a .054 ISO, was 26 points worse than average creating runs against lefties versus 7 points worse than average creating runs against righties. That was over 129 plate appearances, but definitely struggles against same-handed pitching. So a limited Bryson Stott down there. You're really already dealing with a player who was below average by 12 points for run creation overall. He was just good for stolen bases, wasn't really getting on base enough, wasn't really hitting the ball very hard. He is low strikeout and knows how to draw a walk, so that's really what you're hoping for, is that he draws a walk, steals a base, and scores a run. On a short slate, that could be in play, but it's not a 2-gamer today. It's a 4-gamer. There's a little bit more wiggle room. So that's a questionable option against a lefty who is probably going to be in the game for 5 innings if all goes according to plan. Weston Wilson hit 3 home runs in 98 plate appearances, held down a pretty decent triple slash over that same period of time. 205 ISO, a 130 WRC plus in the small sample. Hit the ball very, very hard from the right side. Interesting enough option, again, with multi-position eligibility. Just a lot of strikeouts in there. Probably gets exploited by the veteran Quintana on the mound. And then Brandon Marsh, 35-27. Another guy with some pop in his bat. 16 home runs in 476 plate appearances. Hit the ball very squarely with a 10% barrel, 47.4% hard hits. 108 WRC plus on the year. Also stole 19 bases. Got on at a 328 clip. Brandon Marsh is good. Oops. Come on. Work with me, mouse. Brandon Marsh is good against lefties this year, though. 192, 270, 282. .090 ISO, a 56 WRC plus out of Brandon Marsh against same-handed pitching this year. And he struck out at a 36.7% clip while walking just 7.8% of the time against same-handed pitching this year. So again, another guy, it's a little problematic against lefties down at the bottom of the lineup. So I don't completely take either guy off the board because we probably will get some opportunities in against the bullpen. And again, Brandon Marsh is a player that I just think is good. But most of that quality that you can see in that line, including his contact numbers, including even a 32% strikeout rate, which is obviously aggressively high, but it's worse against lefties, all the power, anything in even a 249 average in the on base, everything about his quality comes against righties. It's kind of limited. Kind of surprised to see him today. For the Mets, pretty standard version of their lineup. Frankie Lindor off the top, 54, 39, 32 homers, 29 steals. The epitome of a star shortstop. Easy to get to, 5,400, 3,900, not ridiculously high prices for Francisco Lindor's talent, especially against Ranger Suarez and the struggling version of Ranger Suarez. Even if you're taking a little home run upside away, and by the way, even with Ranger out there, both Lindor and Vientos above the magic number, Pete Alonso right around the magic number, Nimmo floating a little bit below 6.98, JD Martinez at 5.67. There's still power showing for the Mets. But Lindor's primo either way. It's for decent average, gets on base like crazy, creates a lot of runs, 36% better than average for run creation on the season. Mark Vientos for just 4,200 is a joke. 3,500 is more correct on FanDuel. 27 home runs in his 450 regular season plate appearances, a 14.3% barrel, 46.8% hard hits. Now that we're in the playoffs, he's cheaper on a short slate than he was through most of the regular season when he was too cheap. Don't really understand what they're doing there. Nimmo at 41.32, definitely in play. 9% barrels, 47.1% hard hits this season. 22 home runs, 15 steals. A diminished slash line overall for Nimmo. But definitely a good hitter. Still knows how to draw walks. Still knows how to get on base. Against lefties this year, almost identical numbers outside of the power, really. 108 WRC plus versus a 109 against righties. A 399 slug versus a 400 slug, 324 on base versus a 329. The average was actually lower against righties. So Nimmo's perfectly fine to go to. If you go to him against a righty here, you can go to him against Ranger here. And he's cheap. For the upside that he provides, he's definitely cheap. A little bit more than just another outfielder. Alonso for just 4,600. Monster home run power. 34 on the regular season. Couple clutch homers in the playoffs. 222 ISO, a 123 WRC plus. 13.1% barrel. This is Pete Alonso. Why is he under 5,000? FanDuel got it right. 3,600. DraftKings is doing you guys a favor with how cheap these guys are. It's basically play whatever you want day on DraftKings. Because the pitching is cheap. The bats are cheap. I imagine you can just stack anything that you want together on DK today. I mean, you probably can't go like Judge, Mookie, Brendan Witt, Bobby Witt, Francisco Lindor. You probably can't get like that elite of a combination of players, but you can probably grab 3 or 4 of those guys or 3 of those guys and then a stack to go with it. It is cheap on DK today. Bottom of the Mets lineup, some quality there for sure. Jose Iglesias continuing to hit. It's weird to see him even hitting 5th, but 3,500 for a second baseman, totally playable. 2,800 multi-position on FanDuel. Finished the year at 341, 387, 456. Created runs 40% better than average. Has been a good hitter over time. I mean, it's not like he's ever really been bad. It's just he's not been this kind of a hitter. He's not been as high-end a run creator as he's been. But in terms of his career numbers, over 4,300 MLB plate appearances, 283, 323, 386 hitter, but a 90 WRC plus. 12.5% strikeouts, was always good at putting the ball in play. Benefited from that and was a BABIP-based, again, 283 hitter. And throughout some stretches of maybe around 150, 100 plate appearances, he was this kind of a guy. But this, I would almost be willing to bet, is the best 282 plate appearance stretch of Jose Iglesias' career. 341, 387, 456. Creator runs 40% better than average. These are all-star caliber. These are superstar caliber numbers. He's not that hitter, but cheap, hitting 5th, second base. Just for the balls in play for that cheap price and the correlation with guys below him and in front of him in the lineup, he's a cog in the machine at worst, and he's not mispriced for the performance that he put up this year. JD Martinez at 3,300, 2,900 as first base and outfield on DraftKings if you want to move him around the board. Prefer Pete Alonso at first base by a lot, though.
14.9% barrels and 45.6% hard hits from Martinez this year. We talked about how the output kind of defies the contact that he was making. 16 home runs is just okay for that kind of contact over 491, nearly 500 plate appearances. Just a 172 ISO, even more to the point, kind of flies in the face of that quality of contact. But still created runs 7% better than average, was still a good player for this team. This tells me there's a little bit more on any given slate, and we all know that JD Martinez over the last 10 years has been one of the better power hitters in baseball. Starlin Marte, 34-28, and yes, I acknowledge that we're at the tail end of the JD Martinez run, but based on this, that guy's not gone. Starlin Marte, another effective hitter, 7 home runs and 16 steals on the season, a 102 WRC+, effective in multiple categories, hits the ball fairly hard, very cheap in the outfield, another guy who's a little bit more than just another outfielder. Tyrone Taylor falls more on the just another outfielder side of things, but he's got a lot of skills. He's another guy who does contribute in multiple categories. He hit the same 7 home runs that Starling Marte did, stole a similar number of bases, 98 WRC+ versus a 102, but had a 154 ISO versus the 121 that Marte put up in a similar number of plate appearances. They do a lot of similar things. So if Marte is going to get any kind of popularity, you want to pivot for price, pivot for popularity. There's nothing wrong with going to Tyrone Taylor down toward the bottom of the lineup. He's very good against left-handed pitching, so reasonable enough option for me. And then Frankie Alvarez to close things out with the Mets, 11 home runs on the season, a 164 ISO, 102 WRC+. Not a bad half of the season for when we had him, but it was better last year in terms of the power. 25 home runs and 423 chances as a rookie. It's just the slash line was weak, 97 WRC+. So in some ways, we took some steps forward. Definitely a playable piece at catcher and very cheap, $2,900 with the upside that he's got. Definitely interesting on DK. Jose Quintana, but then I'm going to throw a curveball and go Phillies bats right after that. I almost put the Phillies bats on top, but I got to get a pitcher in here somewhere. So Quintana, Phil's bats, Mets bats, Ranger Suarez. I think the Phils even this up. I don't think they go quietly here. Getting all sorts of notifications. What the hell is going on? Oh, it's Yahoo. Once you're in more than one Yahoo league, these notifications get silly. Especially when it's the transaction notifications that go off at like 4 a.m. It's just that like boom noise. That's all that was. Ramondre Stevenson news. Yanks and the Royals. Royals lineup is in. Yankees lineup last I saw is not. I'll pull it back up though. Nope. Come on. Tanner Bybee starting on Thursday for the Guardians, by the way. Yeah, Power makes a good point, but unrelated, but yeah, definitely interesting move. A lot of power plays, I think, going on behind the scenes with the New York Jets. Sounded like Soleil wanted to Ken Hackett, and Mr. Rogers intervened, got on the phone with Woody, and they canned Soleil instead. But it's a mess. Not going to fix things. Said it at the beginning of last year, and I think it's holding true. That this Rogers experiment was not going to go well. The way I put it going into last year was in a universe in which Verlander Scherzer did not work out for the New York Mets. How is Aaron Rodgers in the exact same kind of a deal going to work out for the New York Jets? And then he blew out his Achilles on like the 4th play of the season. Not that I saw that coming, but yeah, it's a mess. And you're selling out your franchise basically for, 41-year-old mediocre quarterback at this point. And now coaches aren't going to trust you. Your players are questioning what the hell's going on. Who's in charge? Who's making the decisions? It's just weird. Anyway, hit the like button, by the way. A bunch of people here hanging out in the middle of a Wednesday afternoon. Hopefully everybody's doing well out there. Hopefully your weeks are going all right. Check out rotoscouts.com. It's our website. Everything is up behind the paywall these days. Memberships kicked off about a week, 10 days ago. Appreciate everybody who's signed up already. You guys absolutely rock. If you're looking to get behind the paywall, we are not looking to break the bank or take your bankroll away like some other places are. We're looking for less than $1 a day on all of our different plans, and every single plan gives you access to every single piece of content, every tool, every data point for every single sport that we cover right now. Baseball and football, hot and heavy. Kicking off NHL projections. I put up a beta version of projections yesterday. I'm going to have projections for today's NHL slate. If you sign up today on a weekly plan, it's under $7 from now through next Wednesday. You'll have access for baseball, hockey, football, all through that stretch. So you'll have this weekend's football slate. Monthlies are a little bit less expensive. Quarterlies a little bit less expensive than that. But again, every single one of those plans under $1 a day. Every single one gives you access to everything. Come join us. Sign up. At the same time, check out acemind.io. Our sim partners, those guys still rock. Promo code rotoscouts, all in caps over there, still gives you 20% off your first month. We look at them a lot for football. We look at them a lot for basketball when that season starts up. But if you've been around for football shows, we've been checking out Ace Mind all season long and doing quite well with them. So give them a look as well. I appreciate you too, Frederick Doot. Frederick is in the chilly Catskill Mountains. Appreciate the content. Yeah, appreciate you coming by, buddy. Check it out and hit that thumbs up if you haven't done it already. Anybody out there who happens to not be subscribed, hit the subscribe. Probably going to go tomorrow evening, I would think, for a or afternoon for a football quarterback stacks last first looks kind of a show, and then typical schedule for the marathon overview content for the main slate. Probably. Not sure if it'll be Friday or Saturday this week. For once, I don't actually have plans. It's like football season started, and then every single week, everybody in my life was like, hey, how about we do something this weekend? Get involved in the middle of your week and take precious hours away. But I'll let you guys know, but all the more reason, subscribe so that you know when those things go live. Anyway, diving back into this thing, Clarkie Schmidt, 7,900, 9,100, a little bit expensive on your FanDuel slate, but one of the more highly projected overall pitchers on this slate. One of the guys who could give you 5 plus. Yanks definitely, again, kind of aggressively want to win this game. Schmidt for the season, for the 16 starts that we had him, put up a very solid 26.3% strikeout rate. That came on 12.2% swinging. Had a very good 30.4% CSW. Stuff Plus loves the Arsenal. 15 points above average. Probably second on this slate to Dylan Cease. I'm going to guess. I didn't look, but I'm going to guess that's second or close third. 2.85 ERA with a 3.92 xFIP. But this is the real number. If you give him a full season's worth of starts, we probably finish between 3.5 and 4. But still a very effective, talented young pitcher. A lot of upside. It's just a challenging Royals lineup. 18.7% strikeouts for the confirmed version of the Royals lineup. They're not the most threatening hitters in terms of power toward the back of the lineup here, but Michael Garcia can certainly drive the ball. Everybody on the top end of the lineup can hit the ball pretty hard. And a lot of their key bats and most of their first early bats in the lineup are very low strikeout. Don't be fooled by Julie Gurriel at 23.1% in a small sample either. Definitely a guy professional hitter who's going to see a bunch of pitches at worst every time up. So this lineup's going to work a young pitcher. They're going to make him throw a lot of pitches. They're going to put a lot of balls in play. Not a safe spot for Clarke Schmidt at all. A lot more comfy at 79 on DK than he is at 91 on FanDuel. My hope would be that you can get to him at lower ownership maybe than he otherwise ought to be. Seth Lugo, primarily just the threat from the Yankees lineup and the idea of, potentially short start. 85 on DraftKings, 99 on FanDuel. Very expensive on your FanDuel slate. Expensive on DraftKings at 85 for the idea that, we're dealing probably with right around 5 innings, despite the fact that, again, this is one of the better arms for depth in baseball. 206 innings on the season, over 33 starts, pretty tremendous. Down the stretch, 1, 2, 3, 4 out of his last 6 starts, he closed out 7 innings. Had a 10 strikeout game and a 9 strikeout game in those last handful of starts. That's basically the last start of August and all of September. The 2 starts where he failed to go 7, one was a 4 2/3 against Detroit, gave up 4 runs, struck out 4, gave up a homer. The other was a 2-inning appearance against Atlanta. I forget what happened in that one on the 28th. Why did he come out of that after 2 innings? Did that get rained on? Yeah, it's September 20th. I put August. Was it just a situation where they were trying to align him for the playoffs? They went to Lorenzen after 2. He went 2, then they went to Lynch for 2. It seems like that might have been what it was. Not sure why it was a short start, but regardless, was going deep into ball games throughout the second half. And pitched well. He was, again, pitching above his head, I think, but got away with it throughout the entire season. 3.0 ERA, 3.83 xFIP. This is the real number. Medium strikeout at 21.7%, but you pile up innings, you can pile up some strikeouts. 5.7% walks is very good. Limited as far as swinging strikes and throwing strikes overall at 28.1% CSW, but not bad at all in terms of the power that he allowed. 1.91% home runs this year. Came on medium kind of contact. Pretty good average launch angle at just 10.7 degrees. Same thing, similar attributes in years past. Has given up more home runs in those years. Last year, it came on quite a bit of premium contact, 9.6% barrels, 44.2% hard hits, 90.7 miles an hour of exit velo. 2 years ago and this year, those were more limited numbers. But he's not quite this invulnerable to power. Definitely a little bit of power creeping through in the high-end lineup that he's going to be facing. But there are also strikeouts there, 21.7% for the overall lineup. That's helped a little bit at the bottom by Alex Verdugo, but we know how bad he is outside of a couple admittedly clutch hits in the playoffs. Ozzy Cabrera at just 19.3%, another very low-end, non-threatening hitter if those guys are in the lineup. Everybody else, at least medium gettable, outside of Juan Soto up at the top. Everybody else is in the 20s, into the mid-20s, and peaking at 31.2 with Giancarlo. So, believable that Lugo, for however long he's in there, could find some Ks along the way. Just a lot of threat against. Yanks pulling a 4.09, 4.10, call it, implied total. It's basically them and the Padres at the top of the board. Just under 4 runs on the other side for the Royals, though. Believable upside for both offenses. Yankees presumably at the top, at least, going to have this configuration of the lineup that we've seen regularly. Glaber for 42, 3,000, definitely an effective option. Finished the year at a 330 on base, finished with 15 home runs. Honestly, as low end as we know that it actually was, if you just showed somebody those numbers and said that, this was Gleyber Torres' year in the leadoff role, not that all those plate appearances were in the leadoff spot, that's not a terrible looking year. 257, 330, 378, a 104 WRC plus, 15 homers. If you just take away what you already knew in years past about the player and who he was maybe supposed to be and what he's done on and off through his career, it's an okay second base season as second basemen stack up over time. It's not all-star numbers, but it's effective enough, and it's definitely playable ahead of Juan Soto and Aaron Judge when it comes to DFS, especially at those cheap prices. Soto Judge for 58.63 on DraftKings, 45.47 on FanDuel. Definitely paying a big ticket price, but they're big ticket items. 41 home runs, 58 home runs a piece, 281 and a 379 ISO, 80% and 118% better than average at creating runs. You just go to those players if you're stacking up Yankees. I think there's reasonable upside for attacking Lugo with those two bats, 10.75 and 14.6 in the home run model today. Austin Wells, a reasonable option, 4.34 in the home run model. Just cost $3,800 at catcher on DraftKings and is probably going to be hitting cleanup again between Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton. You don't really need to say much more to justify the play than that. But the kid hit 13 home runs in 414 chances, had a solid 105 WRC plus, just a 167 ISO. You'd like to see a little bit more output, but can square the ball up for sure. An interesting catcher bat, draws his walks, medium strikeout at 21%, not bad. Giancarlo Stanton, nobody swings the bat harder. Few people hit the ball harder. 4,500, 3,300 across sites, 27 homers in 459 plate appearances. You give him 600 plate appearances, that's a 35-plus home run season. 242 ISO, 116 WRC+. plus. Being on the field is his only challenge. Yes, he's high strikeout, medium-ish walk. Yes, he grounds into double plays, Bob Costas. We know. Don't be sad about it. It happens. Nobody hits the ball harder than Giancarlo Stanton. He's always in my lineups. 45.33 is a great price. He's way, way, way beyond just another outfielder. 4,900, 3,600 for Jazz Chisholm is an interesting price. He fits in well at third base on DraftKings. Multi-position on FanDuel for 36. Absolutely can fit into my lineups. 24 home runs, 40 stolen bases on the year, a 110 WRC+. plus. Is he perfect? No. Is he very good for DFS? Yes. Volpe does not qualify for the yes at the end of that question. He's neither perfect nor very good for DFS. He's just okay. He fits in at shortstop, which is the only saving grace. He's cheap, and he fits at shortstop to complete a Yankee stack. So if you go to one of these teams and you don't go to a Witt, Lindor kind of an option, Turner kind of an option, Volpe can give you that kind of production on the right day. 12 home runs, 28 steals is not nothing, but it's also not a very good season. 243, 293, 364, and 86 WRC+, plus, just a 121 ISO. Has not met expectations over 2 seasons. And then Ozzy Cabrera and Alex Verdugo at the bottom of the lineup, a non-hitter and a bad hitter. Cabrera at least is very cheap if he's in the lineup. He fits in at first and shortstop on DraftKings, 2,800. Don't really want him at either of those positions. Fills 5 positions on FanDuel. Basically, you can get him anywhere except for catcher, and that's the same as first base on FanDuel. He can't pitch over there yet, but you can plug him in. It's just limit your expectations for production. 12 points below average for run creation, 8 home runs, 4 steals on the season. Verdugo, 13 home runs on the year, a 123 ISO, 83 WRC+. plus. If you get him, he's mix and match quality. If we get Jason Dominguez, he's a better talent. He's got more power upside. The consistency has been about the same for both players. Verdugo at the least is low strikeout, so probably going to put the ball in play more reliably than Dominguez. But, mix and match caliber, down lineup. But the top 6 is still very, very strong here. On the Royals side, Mike Massey, 37-29, 14 home runs and 356 plate appearances. Another guy, very low strikeout, pretty low walk, a lot of balls in play. Can hit the ball hard, 39.2% hard hits last year with a 7 and change barrel rate. This year, 36.9, 7 and change barrel rate. A couple years ago was in 13% barrel. That's a pretty small sample. But a guy who can sting the ball a little bit from the left side of the plate and does so with regularity against, not a bad strikeout, not a bad pitcher, a fairly high strikeout pitcher, so not somebody who's going to be pitching to contact, but a young pitcher who vulnerable, I guess is the right word, the word I'm grasping for here. Bobby Witt at 6,000, 4,000, 32 home runs, 31 steals, a 256 ISO, absolutely a superstar. The guy I've mentioned several times already as the top end of that shortstop equation on this slate. He's fantastic. 14.3% barrels, 48.1% hard hits. A little bit of head-to-head between him and Aaron Judge as far as who the actual MVP is. Not that that's not all said and done already. But Witt's tremendous. Easy to get to. Would love to have him in my lineup whenever I can afford him. 15% strikeouts, 8% walks. Vinny Pasquantino, I mentioned him before, him and Alec Boehm. 12.8% strikeouts, 7.2% walks, 45% hard hits, 7.1% barrels. If you ever spike this, just a little bit more launch, we're going to get more home runs. He hit 19 on the season in 554. He missed some games in there. Probably would have gotten more than 20 on the season. But there's the power and the contact of a 30 home run hitter in there. Whether he ever actually gets there is in question. Whether it actually matters for him is it beyond a doubt does not matter. He's a very, very productive hitter. In just 554 plate appearances, he had 97 RBIs on the season, if you care about RBIs. Nothing that's really under his control as far as the opportunity to drive in runs goes. but did come through with a pretty solid number of RBIs on the season because of how he hits the ball. Sal Perez, 43-31, catcher first base on both sites. Definitely in the mix for shares. A 6.26 is second on the team in the home run model. Sal had 27 on the season, a 185 ISO, 115 WRC+. Another tremendous Sal Perez season. There's nothing really to say about it. 12.2% barrels, 44.2% hard hits. Absolutely dynamite option. Everybody at the top of the lineup is below 20% strikeouts. Then you get to a professional hitter like Julie Gurriel, who, again, 23.1% strikeouts in just 65 plate appearances. You can kind of safely ignore that. He has been a very low strikeout, high to medium walk rate hitter over the course of his brief MLB career. Was a tremendous hitter for a number of years there. Just, mixed output in the small sample with KC. And kind of died on the vine about a year and a half ago as far as his overall quality. That's how he ended up on this team at a cheap price. But there's still quality there. He's still going to work the young pitcher. He's going to see a lot of pitches in his plate appearances. And he can still square the ball up. In his limited sample, 53.7% hard hits is not nothing. So as a cheap option at first base, you can mix and match your way through him in a lot of Royal stacks. MJ Melendez. Premium option for power upside. 8.3% barrels, 45% hard hits. Cost just $2,900 on DK, 26 in the outfield on FanDuel, 4.27 in the home run model. 14 would have been aggressive. Hit 17 homers on the year in 451 chances. Just a 206, 273, 400 hitter this season with a 194 ISO though. The ISO is definitely standout. 85 WRC plus is more reflective of the low average, the very substandard on base percentage. But if we're just home run hunting against Schmidt, which is, viable, he's a relatively fly ball oriented pitcher. He was good at limiting premium contact, limiting barrels this season. But some of that is happenstance. Some of that is luck based on a fly ball pitcher. Melendez is very good at squaring the ball up. He cut about 3 points off of his strikeout rate year over year. It was partly at the expense of walk, but not at the expense of his ability to hit the ball hard, which is a lot of the time you'll see a guy drop. If he drops in strikeouts, his ability to swing the bat as hard as he used to and aggressively as he used to will cut into his contact numbers. That didn't really happen. You could argue that maybe it did in the barrel rate a little bit, but the power output was still very much there for MJ this year. It's an interesting player in the outfield for those cheap prices. Michael Garcia at 38-28, good skill set for DFS scoring. Medium at actually providing it, just a 69 WRC plus on the season. Did steal 37 bases with a 281 on base. That alone is impressive. Hit the ball pretty hard, 42.6% hard hits, but it comes on a light barrel rate, 16.5% strikeout, 6.7% walks. Another guy puts a ton of balls in play, but the success is just, it's weird. He's just a little bit unlucky. 231, 281, 332, just a 101 ISO. The output doesn't nearly match the skill set with that player. Adam Frazier, Kyle Isbell at the bottom, pretty skippable players. 202 and 229, 282, 287, 294, 367 on their slash lines. Totaled out with 12 combined home runs and 14 combined stolen bases in more than 700 plate appearances. It's not a good combo. After the four hitter, the Royals do get a little bit limited. For stacking, for DFS, and on the offensive side of it, those guys remain playable in diminishing degrees as you go down the lineup. But in terms of the Clark Schmidt play, it does become a lot less threatening after four. You got to get through these guys up here probably twice, and then you got not safe coasting, but it's a lot easier ground down there. So it feeds the upside for Clark Schmidt. Yankees bats, Clark Schmidt, homer. Royals bats, Seth Lugo. But it wouldn't shock me at all if Seth Lugo went out there through 7 innings, or let's say 6, through 6 innings and had a very good start here. And the last game of the day. Montero is the highest owned player on the slate. That's a choice. per whose numbers? I mean, out of everybody, Keter Montero is the least likely guy to give you more than like 2 innings, 3 innings. Unless something changed pretty dramatically that I haven't found out about. Yeah, I would double check that. I just don't really. I don't see how he would be that owned. He hasn't gone more than 5 innings since mid-September. It's been almost a month. Had a complete game against Colorado on September 10th, and then didn't go more than 5 innings after that, and really wasn't all that effective down the stretch. Oh, that's right. He also pitched in game 1. Yeah, don't use Keter Montero, guys. I completely forgot about that. He threw 2 innings in game 1. Can I get that? Where is that? Thank you for that note, CBS. Yeah, on Saturday, he went 2 innings, struck out 3, faced 7 hitters, threw 25 pitches. There's no way he gives you five innings today. No, if he's the highest owned player on the slate, highest owned pitcher on the slate, that is a massive mistake by the field. I can't imagine. It's probably a mistake by whatever site that number's coming from. Like, for example, on RG, they've got him at low single digits, and I don't even think that's defensible. So if that number is if he's the highest owned pitcher on the slate, the field has made a gigantic mistake, and don't be part of it. Attack it. Last game up, Landon Knack opening for the Dodgers. Presumably there's an inning and change there. But Roberts is saying that this is a bullpen game. Knack just 4 innings in each of his last 2 starts on the 24th and the 29th. Yet to pitch in the postseason. Just wanted to double check that after noticing that with Montero. Let's see if any new news has come out on this one. It's just an interesting spot because Padres the highest end offense on the as far as the implied runs go. Let's just lighten the neck.
It's just nothing. So, see, this is why I keep saying keep an eye on this spot, because the actual quote from Roberts last night was, "It's essentially all hands on deck. It's a bullpen game. I see one of our relievers starting. We'll sort of talk it through, knowing we've got Jack and Yamamoto for a potential game 5." Hudson threw 4 pitches last night. Anthony Banda threw 13. Kopech threw 19. Blake Treinen, Evan Phillips, Alex Viesa all pretty rested. It's messy at best. Obviously, if he's not on the mound to start the game, it's an even further ding to Landon Knack. He checks in with a respectable enough 24.1% strikeout rate. He had a 3.65 ERA, a 4.20 xFIP on the season. Pretty decent rating by Stuff Plus. Part of the reason the Padres are showing so much power is that he gave up a 4.90% home run rate in his small sample. Just 12 starts, 10.2% barrels allowed, a lot of hard hits, a lot of exit velo on a massive fly ball trajectory. So this is a home run target of a pitcher outside of the fact that he's a decent strikeout, low walk pitcher. He's good in a lot of categories, but the power and the contact that he's allowed are tragically bad. That's really his downside. If he can wrangle that, he might turn into a decent pitcher. But limitations there. I don't know that it really improves his situation coming in out of the pen if they're going to use him in that way, unless it's just looking at it as like, hey, we're going to take the top off of Arias, Tatis, and Profar, then give the kid Machado, Merrill, Bogarts, Peralta, Cronenworth, and Higgy once through and hope he gives us 2. I guess that's what they're probably going to target. But for 7,000, 8,400, I mean, on a day where I was already talking about different bullpen arms potentially being involved in a pretty big way, you can consider the guy who is very likely going to at least get some bulk relief work here. But keep a very strong eye on what's going on in the late game as far as that Dodgers pitching spot goes. The guy that we know is going to throw at least a few innings, Dylan Cease, 8,900, 9,300, expensive. Going up against a very, very good Dodgers team. They have a 21.1% strikeout rate to go against his 29.4% strikeout rate over 33 starts this year. 189 and a third in his 33 starts. You can see the depth difference between him and Lugo. Lugo is another dozen and change innings on top in a similar number of starts. But Dylan Cease is the higher end overall pitcher. 3.47 ERA, a 3.43 xFIP. Monster strikeout numbers, monster swinging strike numbers, 29.3% CSW is very good. Very good at limiting power, 2.36% home runs, difficult to square him up. Last season, a lot of the same. High-end strikeout rate, low power numbers. Was squared up a little bit more last year, but came without barrels. 6.2% each of the last 2 years. Spiked to 8.5% this year, but didn't really hurt him in terms of the home run rate. And monster Stuff Plus rating at 120, easily the true ace of the slate. But he's going to be threatened. There's some K's in the middle of the lineup with a couple of dangerous hitters. Even Ohtani strikes out at a 22.2% rate. It's just when he doesn't, he's usually homering. 54 on the season with 59 stolen bases. He's gotten to the point where I might have to make changes to the model for a full season. The model's geared for like the regular season, and then once we start piling additional games on, things get a little bit funky around some of these big numbers. So with him and Judgy, I got to keep my eye on it over the next couple of days. But just an absolute beast of a hitter, 310, 390, 646. What else is there to say about Shohei Ohtani? He's come down from his $7,000 price tag on DK, I guess you can say. $6,500 over there today, $5,000 on FanDuel. Mookie, $5,200, $4,000. He's so... the pods and specifically Jerks and Profar are so in his head that Mookie doesn't know when he hits home runs anymore. Did you guys see that? The first one where Profar robbed it
and didn't reveal that he actually had caught the ball for about 15 seconds while Mookie was trotting around the bases. And then the one in the most recent game where Mookie actually hit one over the wall and out into the seats for a home run, and was halfway to second base and started cutting across, going in as if Profar had caught the ball because it was in the same spot, and he did the same thing. Pretty ridiculous. But Mookie's tremendous, whether they're in his head or not. 11% strikeouts, 11.8% walks, 19 home runs, 16 stolen bases, a 202 ISO, a 141 WRC plus. 3 positions on FanDuel, including 2 ideal spots in the middle infield to play him at. Just an outfielder on DraftKings, but way, way more than just any other outfielder. Freddie Freeman, 47-34. Playing a little banged up, 22 home runs, 9 steals on the season, a 194 ISO from Freddie. He's just cheap. 47 is way cheap to find Freddie Freeman. 3,400 on FanDuel is a little bit cheap. 47 is very, very cheap, aggressively cheap. Teoscar Hernandez, 49. Max Muncy, 48. That's a dynamite trio of players to have all under 5,000. Fairly priced on FanDuel as well, 34, 33, and 36. Teoscar hit 33 home runs, stole 12 bases, had a 229 ISO, 134 WRC plus. Muncy missed most of the season, still came away with 15 homers, a 262 ISO. He's a lot like Kyle Schwarber in that he strikes out a lot, but he walks a ton. 3 true outcomes hitter for sure. 10.8% barrels, 43.4% hard hits this year. Higher numbers last year in a more complete season. Would have probably gotten back toward this level. He definitely wouldn't have gotten down from these numbers if he had had a full season's worth of plate appearances. Max Muncy's very, very good. And people, at least when he first came back, people seem to have completely forgotten about him. And then it's just been like a slow burn with people, seemingly putting him more and more in lineups. He's still cheap. He's still underappreciated, I think, here. 358 on base. Creator runs 35% better than average. Max Muncy's fantastic. A lot of strikeouts, and again, against one of the best strikeout pitchers in baseball, could be problematic there. But if you're looking for power upside, the ability to get on base, create correlated scoring events with Will Smith, with the bottom of this lineup, Max Muncy's interesting. Smith for just 41. Tremendous contact numbers from the catcher. 33 on FanDuel. You can play him like a first baseman if you want to. 20 home runs, a 185 ISO, 111 WRC plus. Gavin Lux for 34, 27 at second base. Not a terrible option on a short slate. 10 home runs, 100 dead at league average WRC plus. Decent ability to hit the ball hard from the left side, 41.1% hard hits on the year. He's just okay, but does have skills at a short position. Tommy Edman mix and match across multiple positions on both sides for cheap. 6 home runs, 6 steals in 153 plate appearances down the stretch. Gave him a little bit of quality. Has always been a medium, 15, 18 home runs, handful of stolen bases guy, and then lives and dies on whether or not he gets on base and correlates with the rest of the guys in the lineup. And then Andy Pajes, pretty decent power bat, 13 home runs in 443 plate appearances. The performance ebbed and flowed throughout the season for the young player, but definitely a talented kid. 10.7% barrels, 40% hard hits on the year. You could do a lot worse if you're stacking up the Dodgers and you need to get cheap. And then closing things out with the pods, it's 2:47. The slate starts in like half an hour or so. Luis Arraez at the top, 37-29. 314, 346, 392 on the season, a 109 WRC plus, a tremendous table setter. Extreme low strikeout at 4.3%, extreme low walk at 3.6%. Doesn't mash the ball, but he's always putting it in play. He's always involved for correlated scoring. Hits ahead of Fernando Tatis, who crushed one in a big spot yesterday. Tatis on the season, 21 home runs, 11 steals, 340 on base, a 135 WRC plus. Really seemingly hit his stride down the stretch through September and into the playoffs here. Profar for 39, 31, 24 homers, 10 steals. Wielded a hot bat for most of the season. 15.1% strikeouts, 11.4% walks, and easily the best season of his career. 139 WRC plus, and you get him this cheap. He's just an outfielder, but that's a really cheap price. At worst, it's a killer spot in the lineup, even with a little bit of diminished production. That's a killer option in amongst a couple high-priced bats there. Manny Machado at 5,000, 3,400, hit 29 home runs, stole 11 bases, has a 197 ISO on the season, 12.22 for him in the home run model, 10.09 for Profar, 14 plus for Tatis, just under the magic number for Jackson Merrill. Again, we are targeting a 4.90% home run rate that Landon Knack allowed. Knack is presumably going to be in the game at some point. You do lose that once the relievers and the opener and so on and so forth come into the mix. But at least for a couple innings there, hopefully, they're going to be able to draw down against that number. Jackson Merrill at 48, 35, 24 home runs, 16 steals, a 208 ISO, a 130 WRC+. Plus. Absolutely tremendous. A little bit cheap in the outfield on DraftKings for 48, 35. Fair price on FanDuel. Xander Bogaerts at 4,000, 2,800. Mix and match quality better than that in the infield. 17.1% strikeouts and 6% walks. Didn't hit the ball particularly hard this year. Had limited results at 264, 307, 381. Just a 95 WRC+. Plus. But this is a guy who, over the years, has been a very good, better than this kind of a hitter. He pulled these numbers. He had similar numbers through last year and pulled it together to a 285, 350, 440 clip by the time he was done. 120 WRC plus with 19 homers and 19 steals. That was still a good season. Missed some time this year. I don't know that he gets back to this level necessarily, but I think he could have improved on these numbers over more time, meaning that I don't think it's necessarily the player's shot. I just think a combination of some bad games, a bad start, and then some missed time kind of limited the overall quality of the season. But I think there's still a good player there. And at least on any given slate for cheap pricing in the infield, definitely can do worse than Xander Bogaerts against a bullpen. David Peralta, Jake Cronenworth, and our guy Kyle Higashioka, who's been a monster in the playoffs. Mix and match quality throughout at the bottom of the lineup. Peralta, veteran guy, 3,000, 2,500, 8 home runs on the season, a good run creator at 115 WRC plus over 260 plate appearances. Jake Cronenworth at 33, 28, fills second base for a cheap price. Hit 17 home runs in 656 plate appearances. Ended up at a 105 WRC plus, just a 149 ISO. He's just okay, but an okay lefty bat for a cheap price at second base to fill out a stack to create a cheap one-off spot. It's not a bad option. And then Higgy with his 10.9% barrels, his 17 home runs in 263 plate appearances, his 2 home runs in the playoffs so far. A lethal bat down at the bottom of the lineup. Kind of a home run or bust play, but from a very cheap catcher, you could do worse than rostering home run or bust plays. 10.55 in the home run model, but again, that is drawn against only Knack, not the rest of the bullpen that we're going to see today. Overall, I guess we got to go Padres bats considering the highest implied total on the slate. But before we do that, I'm going to go Dylan Cease. The Dodgers make me hesitate there, but he is the best pitcher by far on the slate. So Dylan Cease, Padres bats, Dodgers bats, and really nothing from the Dodgers bullpen or starting. Just because it's the one spot we don't really have any kind of idea on right now. Mr. Don, I don't like none of y'all. Mamba, what pitcher would you take with Cobb, if I might ask? Question, what's a pitcher you like today, if I might ask? We just did a whole show about that. Dylan Cease is a pitcher I like today. Clark Schmidt is a pitcher I like today. Jose Quintana is a pitcher I like today. So if you're going with Cobb, that's 3 options. Those happen to be the top 3 projected pitchers on the short slate. Cobb's another spot. I know I just said it's the one spot we don't really know about with LA, but that wasn't at all true. Cobb, we really have a major question mark about. Cobb could come in and pitch 2 innings today. He could also come in and pitch 6. I really don't know what to expect. Dude made 3 starts all season. Hasn't pitched since early September. Outside of just, simulated bullpen stuff. So there are I like 3 pitchers, 4 pitchers better than I like the guy that was already in your lineup with that question, Mr. Don. But if you're going with Cobb, then any one of the top 3 out of that group, probably Clark Schmidt is the, quote, safe guy because of the, somewhat lower end matchup. Dylan Cease is the highest end guy. The only true ace on the slate, but the most challenging matchup against the Dodgers. And then Jose Quintana probably falls somewhere in between. Tough matchup against the Phils, but a cheaper price than both other guys. Definitely some upside. Definitely capable of giving you 5+. It's a short slate. I expect short starts from most of these guys. If you get 6 innings and a quality start from any one of them, it's going to be an advantage on this slate on FanDuel. If you get the 6 innings on DraftKings, even with no quality start bonus, still gets some bump. Lemons, that lefty reliever from Cleveland. Again, no guarantees on any of these relievers. These are just things that I'm thinking about that these game scripts might go. That guy's name was Sobrowski. So multi-inning lefty against a lefty-heavy Detroit lineup in a game where we're kind of thinking the Cobb comes out early. Hasn't pitched in the playoffs yet, but is on the roster. Let me triple check that. Let's see, does this mention him anywhere? Nope. Yeah, Cobb's thing down the stretch was a blister. So it's not like he had an arm injury. So I don't think that necessarily limits him, but just the idea that he hasn't really pitched much all year. And yeah, in terms of those Cleveland relievers, we could see a chunk of like an Eli Morgan and Andrew Walters, but I like the idea of the lefty with Sobrowski. I like the multi-inning thing. I don't think it's going to be Gavin Williams. For one, would just be bringing in a righty who has never pitched out of the bullpen that I know of. Actually, no, wait. I think he might have a little bit last year. But regardless, would be bringing in a righty to be threatened by all those lefties. You're not bringing in an advantageous situation if you do that. No, he hasn't. He hasn't pitched out of the bullpen in his career. Gavin Williams. So, yeah, I could see it. But again, if you do get like 5 out of Cobb, then I think they just go directly to the, Herron, Kate Smith, Gaddis, Clase pool, the higher leverage guys. So it depends on what kind of start Cobb gives us. But I do think there is that at least an angle. Right now, he was the lane that allowed me to build a Yankees Royals game stack. I'm probably going to change it out, but maybe I don't. Maybe I roll the dice. I don't love doing that on FanDuel. It's just what's in the placeholder right now. But every now and again, you can get away with it. Thank you, Jim. I appreciate that. Jim knows how to butter me up at the end of the question to make sure he gets his answer. Jim says, hi, Tara, if you're going to play this slate, what stack and pitchers would you go with? Thanks. You're great at what you're doing. Yanks rated at the top of the board. I do like that spot for New York. Outside of being a Yankees fan. I just think there are very high-end bats, and I think Lugo, I've been chasing the Lugo comes back to earth game a little bit. So maybe that's part of it. But the Yanks rate out highly for power. I like that top end of the lineup. You can get to various configurations with a couple premium outfielders and a lot of the other teams on this slate. If you're looking at, you get my premium outfielders from the Yankees. A lot of other teams have more high-end infielders than the Yanks do. So I think they stack well with a number of these teams. Yanks Mets stack well. Yanks Royals would stack well in that game stack, like I said. Dodgers would stack fairly well. Again, price-wise, that's a challenge. Who am I taking, Judge or Soto? Both of them together if I can get there. If I had to pick, it would probably just be a price consideration. To me, there's really no talent gap between the two, projection gap between the two. So just price fit, whichever works. If you equalized everything, I would probably just say Judge. There's a little smidge of more ceiling there, but it's very, very close, which is why you asked, obviously. But yeah, I guess if I had to pick, I would take Judge. But yeah, in addition to the Yanks, easy to say the Guardians against Montero, and then the Tigers bullpen, I think is a pretty solid mixer there. The Dodgers just project out highly because they're the Dodgers, but they're facing Dylan Cease. I can really see the Guardians and the high-end version of the Guardians and some of those guys up at the top of the lineup coming through against Montero in that spot. So that would probably be team number 2. I don't mind that as a mixer. The Royals and the Tigers also kind of fit that bill as probably going to be a little lower owned, reasonable enough path to success. No reason the Tigers couldn't get to Alex Cobb. No reason the Royals couldn't get to Clark Schmidt and their quality teams. So I'd probably be looking to go to the Yankees, one of the higher end and popular teams, and then one of the more mid-board type teams that isn't going to be quite as highly owned. And I think the Guardians and those teams fall into that group. And then pitchers wise, I just did kind of re-break it down after doing an hour and 55 minutes on it. But again, any of those guys obviously at the very top of the board. Cease, the only true ace on the slate, challenged by the Dodgers, challenged by Price. I do like Clark Schmidt against the Royals. I think he's effective. He's a good medium strikeout pitcher, one of the better strikeout options on the slate. Out of the top pitchers, one facing the Dodgers, one facing the Phillies, one facing the Yankees, the matchup against the Royals, good as they might be, is the easiest matchup there. As we looked at, after the top 4 hitters, that is a less than challenging, less than talented Royals lineup. They're not super high strikeout, but Schmidt's good enough to go find a few against them. So I do like that spot. It also, though, wouldn't surprise me if Schmidt gave up 4 runs in 3 innings and was out of the game pretty quickly. There's no safe spot on this slate. Jose Quintana is very talented. Has strung together 3 good years in a row for the time that he's pitched. Very challenging matchup with the Phillies. No real advantage for him against Kyle Schwarber and Bryce Harper lefty-lefty. But down lineup, the Phillies put some weird bats in there. We've got Bryson Stott. We've got Brandon Marsh. Both bad lefty-lefty. Advantage Jose Quintana for however many times he faces them in the 7 and the 9 spot in that lineup. But that does peak the advantage in his direction. But everybody else in that lineup is dangerous. He's offset by Price to the other top options on the slate, though. So I think he's just as competitive with those guys, and there's really no daylight between any of those projections. It's less than a strikeout. Lugo just severely challenged by 9,900 on FanDuel. 85 is less challenging on the DraftKings slate, but a very tough matchup against the Yanks. Cobb against Detroit. Again, I have no idea what to expect from Alex Cobb today. I know that Alex Cobb is a guy who's talented. I know that Alex Cobb is good at keeping the ball on the ground. Those are the 2 things I can promise you. He could find a couple of strikeouts along the way. I have no idea whether he's going 2 innings or whether he's going 6 innings. I think that's your range. I lean toward the 2 or 3 innings, given the fact that we've seen him make 3 starts all year, that he hasn't pitched since September, early September. So I really lean 2-3 innings, but it wouldn't knock me out of my chair if he went 5. Knack, again, might not even be on the mound to start the game, might not even get into the game. Keep an eye on that spot if you're planning on playing it, because it might change. Ranger Suarez, I do think is a talented pitcher. Good at keeping the ball down, good at limiting home run power. Has a little bit of that impact on the Mets today, though Francisco Lindor, Pete Alonso, and Mark Vientos were all still showing power on the Mets side. 95.82 is expensive as far as how this board falls. Not a monster strikeout option, and really, really struggled for both depth and quality down the stretch, but had a tremendous 10-12 starts to begin the season. Has had success over the years, has also been decidedly bad over the years. And then Cater Montero, again, we talked about this just a few minutes ago. Somebody mentioned that Montero was projected to be one of the highest owned players on the slate. I am putting Montero in the do not play him category. So there's a big contrast there. Montero, I had projected coming into today for just 3 innings, just based on the fact that he hasn't been pitching deep. It's a playoff game. He's an inexperienced pitcher, and he's going up against Cleveland. I wasn't giving him anything. I had forgotten that he just pitched on Saturday. He pitched 2 innings on Saturday through 20-some-odd pitches. We are not absolutely not getting 5 innings out of Cater Montero today. 3, maybe. I could see 3. I don't think we see him even pitch into a 4th inning. I think that's how limited the Cater Montero spot is. Tiz is here. What's going on, Tiz? Tiz says, howdy, Tarek. Can you pick a combo of hitters you like more? Lindor and Manzardo or Naylor and Edman? Lindor and Manzardo. For one thing, you're buying 2 better spots in the lineup. Manzardo hitting up toward the top of that Cleveland lineup. And he's also got an appreciable amount of power. Lindor over Naylor is just better man for man in the heads up. Naylor's very, very good, not to take anything away, but I think we can agree that Lindor's the better player. Obviously different positions there. But yeah, man for man, just purely on talent, the Lindor-Manzardo side is probably better. And then when you bring the lineup into the equation, Edman hitting 7th, or most likely hitting 7th, the Lindor-Manzardo, you're getting just more bites at the apple with a leadoff man and a 2-hitter. Nothing. Mama says, as a stack, sorry to clarify, I've said it all season, has been true all season. Padres better than Yankees. That was true for, I wouldn't say all season, but maybe the second half of the season. The Pods were like the best team in baseball the second half of the season, so it's nothing wrong with that. But the Yanks were, over that first portion of the season, the Yanks were the best team in baseball. So it comes and goes. Man for man as a stack, which team was better? As a 3-man, probably the Yankees. As a 5-man, probably the Padres. I wouldn't really argue with you as far as the Padres being a deeper man-for-man lineup. Yankees at full peak form with everybody playing well, then it's a different story. But that's not what they had this year. Last question, who's the top player at shortstop? Frankie Lindor. Yeah, lock in 1 minute. We made it all the way up to lock. I'm just going to roll with that Cleveland reliever and see what the hell happens. Either look like a genius or like an idiot when he's a 0 and doesn't pitch. Yeah, I forgot lock was 308. I was thinking it was 330. But either way, doesn't change anything. Mamba says nope, literally all season. Go back and check it. I have neither the time nor the inclination. I'll take your word for it. With that in mind, guys, 2 hours and we're up to lock now, so not all that much left to talk about. Keep an eye on that Landon Knack situation if you're swapping things out. For Yanks, would you go Judge, Stanton, Soto, and Torres? Sure. Nothing wrong with that. Love that group. I've gone to that a number of times this season. You guys rock. Keep an eye on schedule. I'll let you guys know when football is going to be happening this week. I'm going to jump back over to hockey and continue working on those projections and hopefully post some more beta hockey projections for tonight. Just a test sample, so no promises on how good they are yet. Still refining the model, but I'm going to pop that up there. As Andy's saying in the chat, stay safe in Florida. If you're in Florida, I know several of you guys said you are. Stay safe. Batten down the hatches. Probably too late to get out at this point, but stay safe. Best of luck to you. And we will, I'm sure, see you guys very, very soon. With that in mind, good luck out there today. Somebody go win something. And we'll see you tomorrow for something. See ya.